Hi, I'm Shelby Matthews with Bernstein Realty, and today we have Vinh with us with My Foreclosure Hero, and today we are going to talk about auctions, foreclosures, novations, and anything and everything pertaining to investment properties.
I just got a lead come in Crystal Beach, and I'm going to send it to you real quick.
Okay.
So since you're talking about novation, I just wanted to kind of bring it up. But, you know, we have clients that are in foreclosure that are about to lose their house. And so they'll send us the mortgage statement. And based on these type of deals, like when you look at it, it's got the unpaid principal balance, it's got the interest rate, and then what they're behind, which is the reinstatement figure.
Right.
And once we come up with that mortgage statement, we can figure out which investor wants to buy the deal. So you mentioned novation deals. And so what we'll do is that because we're the buyer ourselves, we'll put it in contract and we'll fund it ourselves. But if you're part of the team, which you are, we send it out to our team members that are in our network that if you want these type of deals, we'll give you 24 hours to look at the deals. And if you like it, then we transfer the novation deal from us to you.
Right, and for those that don't know what novation essentially is, the easiest way to say it is, yes, he has the clientele who the owner and the seller is of that property, and then where I come in is we're finding the end buyer.
That's
so
correct.
That's the most important thing. So it's kind of like playing in a sense like a middleman, but not essentially. We're just finding the end buyer.
That's right.
At the end of the day to, you know, figure out anything and everything, taking it to the title company, finding out if there's any liens on the property, and making sure everything is crossed with T's and dotted with I's.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day.
Yeah, and normally what we'll do is whenever there is a seller that is involved in a pre-foreclosure, they're about to lose their house in 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, because the title company does take some time to pull title, which I love title companies. But we pull our own title just to make sure that deal works out, because we don't want to shop around and give you, your investor and buyer, a deal that can't be closed because there's an IRS lien, there's a judgment, there's a credit card, there's a mechanics lien. So we do the front end work.
Right.
And we put the package together and give you all the numbers. And so whenever you do shop around for these buyers, they're able to execute. And once they execute, then we can send it to the title company. So that's what we're able to do to make sure that people on our team don't fail this type of thing, because the pre-foreclosure is so fast and that we don't want them to take too long to get these deals done.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's just so many other caveats that come into it, and every deal is so special because
Yeah.
you just never know what you're going to get, whether it's HOA,
Yeah.
tax liens, you know,
Yeah.
airship affidavits. You just never know what you're going to come across on those. So it's always something different. But one thing I found that was really interesting that I find will spark a lot of people's attention is seeing you at the auction the other day.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It was my first time attending the Harris County auction, which is every Tuesday of the month. And I saw Vin there on the 3rd of September, and he is just such a boss. I just sat there and I learned, and I had so many questions. I was just like a kid in the candy store. It was like Wall Street for real estate is probably the best way to put it. And
you definitely hit it. So yeah, we call it the Texas Tuesday.
Texas Tuesday.
And in the state of Texas, all of the foreclosures are held on that first Tuesday. So it doesn't matter if you're in Harris County, Montgomery County, Galveston, Brazoria, Fort Bend, it all happens on that Tuesday at the same time, 10 o'clock. And so if you're wanting to buy a property in Galveston and in Harris County, you have to have two separate players. And so whenever there's an auction, we have a team that does auction bidding on all counties. So if you're an investor in Travis County or in Bexar County, which is Austin and San Antonio, we would have to send one of our teammates here to go bid a property for you over there.
Right.
With the cashier's check, right? So like when you saw me on Tuesday, we had 8 precincts, which is in the constable sale, there's 8 precincts, and you can't be at each precinct at the same time.
Right.
So we have to have 8 bidders in those precincts along with other bidders in the mortgage side. So when you saw me, yes, I was busy. I was doing so many other things, but there was so much coordination, because if they all start at the same time, and if you don't hear what the auctioneer is bidding off, you missed the property.
Right.
And so, sorry, I was distracted, but yes, I did see you there. What, did you learn anything? Did I give you any gems or anything?
I learned so much. I'm super old school in my own way, so the fact that you recommended that I go pick up a newspaper and observe it, I love that. I'm a hands-on girly. So for me to just like read that and be like, okay, I can understand this, and then convert that into, you know, what's on, you know, my laptop, etc., what's on the actual HCAT website, that helped a lot. But I will say some things that I did learn from you is having a cashier's check prepared and having a little extra cushion on top, because 2 to 3 days from the day that you buy, you know, your property at auction, whoever is a trustee or an attorney that is handling that file, then they can just go ahead and refund you the money that, you know, you may have overpaid, essentially, right? So if the bidding, you know, starting at $500 and you brought a $10,000 check, and then, you know, auction price ended up selling at $9,000, you will be refunded that $1,000, essentially, for fun, easy numbers.
So that's, it's just called excess. And so if you brought 2 checks at $10,000 and you bought a house for $5,000, then within 3 weeks they'll give you back a check for the $5,000. So so I mean, it's, you don't lose your money, you get your money back. So but I do want to say, like, based on the newspaper that you saw right last time at the auction, what was the best deal? What was the minimum bid? Because
$512.
Like, so like a lot of times people look at these minimum bids and I'm like, how is it possible that the starting amount is so low? Right? And when you saw all those minimum bids, you're like, Vin, like, why didn't you tell me this like years ago when I met you? I don't know what's going on, right? But tell us, what were you thinking when you saw these minimum bids, and like what was going on? Because you came there for the first time and you had no idea, and then all of a sudden I'm throwing you on this deep end, and I'm like, go over there, we're gonna start over there. But tell us what were you thinking? Like, what's going on in your mind?
So my first, you know, thought process with that, when I saw a number at $500, I was like, this can't be real. That was my first thing that came to mind, which I think is a common misconception, because people think they're just buying the property at $500 or whatever the bidding amount is, right? And that is not what it is. You were just, correct me if I'm wrong, right? But in that case, you're just basically purchasing the title. You're purchasing the deed and the transfer of the deed to go into your name. And then that's whenever, like 2 to 3 days after, you go to the bank or whoever was providing the loan previously, and you say, hey, look, I just bought this property, what's owed on it? And they might say to you, well, the loan amount is $90,000 that you have left over. So now you just picked up this property for, you know, $9,000, but you now have the loan that's $90K. So now you're at $99K.
That's right. So like, what Shelby said was definitely true, right? So like a lot of people that come to the auction, they got taught like a $99 class around the boonies. You know, they got this little desk here, and they're like coming here thinking they're buying these properties for $500, $600, $1,000. But most of these properties do have mortgages on it, which is what you're talking about. So it's buyer beware, and what it means is that like you have to do all your research from the day one, from when the list is ready. So like what we'll do is that we'll look at the newspaper or the digital version now, is that we'll comp every single one of them, and then we have to pull title on the county records office, every single one of them. And no title company in America is going to do it all for you, right? They're going to have to charge you, and it takes some time. So we have a software that pulls title for every single one of those properties. And then once the title is pulled, we then put all the liens that are on those prospective properties, and then we add it up based on the bid, see if it's a good deal.
Right.
And then from there, if it is a good deal, then we'll drive every single one of those properties. But you know that these are auction properties, and you can't get inside of it. You can't knock on the door. You can't do anything. You only can drive by, see if the house is there, and then once you do that, then you put your whole sheet together and then figure out what you're going to bid. Right. So there is a process behind that, right? So it's just not, it looks easy, but it's not that easy. So you still have to know who the bank is, what is owed, if they're behind, just like the conversation earlier. If they're behind on their mortgage, you have to know like how much to reinstate, because if you buy it for $500 or $5,000 or $50,000, and if there's a mortgage on it for $90,000, that's, you know, hasn't been paid since COVID, which is like $60,000 behind.
Yes.
Now you just bought a deed or a title for $5,000, and now you have to pay all the reinstatement, have to pay off all the payoff, and now you're stuck like losing money. So yeah,
Right.
definitely don't advise that. So definitely do your research.
And numbers have to make sense. That's the biggest thing. And he taught me something very cool, which I'm sure a lot of people also already know that are in the investment world. But, you know, once you go ahead and you secure your loan amount and you secure, you know, any type of, you know, I just went blank, so we're going to cut that portion out. What is it? Oh my
Financing?
gosh.
What are we
No,
talking
not
about?
even financing. Like once you
Subject to?
secure the loan, and then once you do any type of like remodeling or renovations
Okay.
to the property, so you have your budget for that. Setting aside off top, would you say 10% if you're going to move forward at the end of the day?
You know,
to
normally,
sell the property, or what would you say for that?
So normally, like, you know, based, so the median house, you know, in Houston, Harris County now is like 350, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere around there, right? And so, like, if you get a starting bid at 25,000 and the mortgage is for 200,000, right? So that's 225, but the property's worth 350, so there's still a six-figure spread there, right? And so I normally look at the square footage of the house and I multiply by $20 a square foot for a basic remodel. So if that house is 3,000 square foot, I'll calculate $60,000 dollars for repairs. And so if I'm making six figures and minus the $60,000 in repairs, then there's only 40,000 profit. I may not even want to do the deal, right? So like based on those numbers, those are the things that kind of prohibit us from making a decision on buying the property after we drove by it. So yeah. But yeah, there's definitely got to be a budget for the repairs and the closing costs, right?
Right. And I just think that's an important factor, because people, I think, kind of forget sometimes that at the end of the day, you might still have closing costs that you might have to pay off, or taxes, or real estate fees, whatever the circumstance may be applicable towards. So I think that's just something to kind of consider.
What's your closing cost these days right now for a $350,000 house?
Well, of course, we're always going to say a full 6% if we're listing the property.
I know. Why would you guys be crazy enough not to pay 6%? Do you want them to work half-ass? Like, you're only willing to pay them half? You got to pay them the full amount. That's the only reason why and how they're going to help you get to where you need to be at. Because a lot of investors, too, is like they try to cheap on the front end and then they expect this high-end service, but you can't offer half and get full service, right? And so those are always the misconception of not paying somebody fully what they're worth, because everybody has a different value, right?
And going the extra mile, I just think it makes you feel better at the end of the day too.
Yeah,
I don't know
absolutely.
about you. I do know about you because you go the extra mile quite often yourself.
I help all of my team. I do above and beyond, right?
Yeah.
And so like that $350,000 house, right? For us, in our auction prices, we calculate a 10% closing cost, which is high, right? So we calculate the 6% realtor fees, we calculate the 1% title policy,
right?
And we calculate the 1% taxes, and then the 1% closing cost. So like at 9%, so on a 350 at 10% closing cost, that's $35,000 we have to calculate in there.
Right.
So the 350 minus the 35 minus the $60,000 in repairs, now it brings us to like, oh my God, I'm only making $25,000 on the deal. So then I'll pass up on it, or I'll sell to an investor that needs to only make $25,000-$50,000 per deal, right? Because we all have a different budget, right? Yes. And so like doing that helps create the buyer and then also get the economy to move, and then also everybody makes money. So
right.
But that's my calculation.
No, the market has to make sense, and the numbers have to make sense. So I'm totally with you on that. But I do want to talk about something special. It kind of relates back to our Novation deals that we just talked about, but we just recently closed a deal together. And I would like to discuss how that was kind of transparent.
Sure.
It was very cool because you have a portfolio yourself, right? And you are also creating portfolios for other clientele.
That's right.
Is that how we would, kind
That's
of
right.
state that to be? So that was very cool. So you were allowing me to represent essentially, your client who you had prepared, your deals for, and you handle, from what I learned from him, that you handle all his deals for him on that end. And you were kind of like the middleman communicating everything. And then we found him an end buyer. So if you would like to talk about that for a second and kind of discuss like how you got him and how you can help other people and pick up more people in that way, and we can kind of work with them moving forward if they have properties that they would like to, have our help on.
Yeah. So like in the last 10 years, right, we've been buying and selling real estate, right, at the auction, right? And so on an average year, we buy anywhere from 70 to 80 homes at the auction, right? And then additional 20% of them are pre-foreclosures right before the auction where they don't even hit the auction block, right? And so that's a lot of deals, right? That's a lot of deals. That's a lot of money. And so instead of making us full and instead of us always buying for ourselves, we've added to where if you join the team or you're a part of our team, we help you buy deals for yourself, for your family. So for instance, if you say, hey, Vin, I got 100,000 and from now to the end of the year, I want to buy 2 deals. Well, then I'll carve out and I'll look for the area, the location, what you're looking for, the subject to, or the pre-foreclosures or the auctions. And I'll locate those deals and then sandwich them in, novation them in to an opportunity for you, right?
Right.
And so like you mentioned earlier, the guy is a retired police officer, right? He's with a Houston fired police officer for like 25 years. He retired last year, right? And so he's got a small Roth IRA account, which is like right under $100,000.
Which I thought was very cool, by the way.
Thank you.
Yes,
thank you.
I thought that was super cool. I love that. Learned something new on this one. You always do, but that one was a cool one for me.
Yeah. So he had his 401k with the union, but he didn't know what to do with it.
Right.
It was just sitting there, right? And I said, hey man, take this out, put it into a self-directed Roth IRA, traditional Roth IRA. And that once you have it in the Roth IRA, everything that you buy is going to be tax-free as long as you put it back into the retirement account, right? So he transferred into the Roth IRA, set up this whole thing, and I said, hey man, what are you comfortable in buying, right? Because he doesn't know anything about real estate.
Right.
And I was like, man, I help you, don't worry, I got it. And so he was like, hey man, I want to buy 2 properties this year. And so what we did was we just set up the whole account, find out what he wanted to buy, and all he had to do was call his custodian, which is at the Roth IRA, and issue the checks out to the name of the Roth IRA.
Right.
So in order to buy the property, it has to be in the name of the Roth IRA for them to give you credit as. Right. So the 2 checks went to the Roth IRA. I took them with me and I said, hey, stand right here. And when that number comes, you raise your hand and you don't put it down until you win. And he's like, man, I'm so nervous. He's like sweating over here. He's like, man, I don't know if I can do this.
He was so nice.
Yeah, he's a nice guy, right? And that's the thing too, right? So like I'll get you to the finish line. All I got to do is get you to pull up, get you to show up. You got to show up. You got to show up prepared. You got to know what you need to do. And so when he showed up and he raised his hand, and I told him to stop at a certain amount, and so when he won the property, the check gets paid to the attorney, which is the constable, and then he endorses it over to them, and then in 3 weeks they get the deed, right? And so that happened, and when he got the deed, I did the whole eviction part, the whole cash for keys. And so our company's a little bit different. I don't know if you noticed that, and so we do a cash for keys program, and essentially what that is that instead of us filing for an eviction, we pay the seller and help them move at the same time.
Yes, that's important.
And so this seller, particularly for this deal that we're talking about, she lives in Tyler, Texas, and she's probably maybe 3 hours away, 150 miles away. And so she's an older lady, and so we knocked on the door, house was vacant, and we went back every other week, and we've realized that she doesn't live in the house anymore, right? But then right when we're about to do the eviction on it, the neighbor says she's actually alive and she lives over here, and she gave us her phone number, right?
Oh, nice. Okay.
And so we called her, and we said, hey, look, we'd rather not do the eviction. We want to help you move. We want to transport all your stuff, put everything in boxes, pay for the mover, pay for the guys, get it all up there, and pay you for the time. And of course, she's bawling out crying. She's so happy. She's losing her stuff. And so after we did that, we were able to put it on the market and then get a final buyer through you. And then that's how we're able to sell it, right? Mm-hmm. And so deals like that, a lot of people think, well, investors are like sharks, and they're
also really good.
They have different names for these investors, right? But you have to think about we're all human, right? We're all want to help each other out, and we're all doing good things, right? But the way I see it is that when the numbers get tight, they start getting really cringy and start cutting corners and stuff like that, right? So a lot of our deals, have so much cushion that we're able to help more people along the way, and offer the full 6% commission, obviously too, right?
Yes.
And so like on a deal like that, he used his Roth IRA. You found him a buyer. We procured a buyer. They went through title, and then at closing, and you can share how much money he made on the thing if you want to. Do you remember how much the net amount was?
He walked away with $152K.
Yeah.
So I don't know what else
So
exactly was put into that. I know you told me about $15K that you guys put into that.
Yep.
And then I don't even know what he bought it for. I didn't even want to ask him.
37.1.
37,000.
37
and made $152K essentially at the end of the day.
Yeah, so right at six figures, right? Right at six figures, right? And it's not his first deal. He's done 5 deals with me in the last year and a half, right? Mm-hmm. But the cool thing about it is that the Roth IRA, the custodian signs off on the deed, and all of the money goes back into the Roth IRA, tax-free.
Which is really cool because the company that you guys ended up using, I don't want to throw that name out there, but the company that you guys ended up using was able to sign for you guys, handle everything, and he just came in so his signature can be notarized, and it was that simple.
See how simple that was?
It was so simple, and I'm familiar with Roth IRAs, etc., and I think they're great, but I just didn't know. I know how you can use your 401k, etc., but I've never seen it written on a contract where it says XYZ's name, IRA number, XYZ.
There you go. Yeah, but you agree it was simple, like
super simple.
Like the Roth, their custodian took care of everything.
It was very organized, very structured, and I think it's super smart because at the end of the day, now you're going your Roth.
Yep.
And you just almost kind of like recycling.
Yeah.
At the end, I don't know if you ever play around with 1031 exchanges.
If you have some money in the Roth IRA, it's better to do the Roth IRA because of multiple reasons, right? But the 1031, you only have like 90 days to identify a property, then 180 days to transfer it over. So like the time is kind of limited.
Crunch time. It's crunch time for sure.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, different people have different strategies and different ways of shuffling the funds to keep on reinvesting in themselves. And so, but he's retired, he's happy, he's doing 2-3 deals a year, and he's making a good amount of money. So, I mean, kudos, so.
Yeah, and I think that's great. And, moving forward, how can somebody contact you in order to receive your services to have that portfolio built for them? What does it take in order for them to receive your hard work?
So...
If you'd like to share that.
Yeah, so let's say, what people say is like, do you want to have like a strong army of 10 or like 100 people that are like not even performing, right? And I will say like, and I never want to compare with anybody, but like you could have numbers, you could have tons of people, but it's like the Pareto's rule, right? The 80-20 rule, right? You could have like 20% perform at 100% peak, or just 80% like not do anything at all, right? And so like for me, like I want to get people that want to be financially free. I want people that want to grow. I want people that want to succeed in life. I don't want the ones that we have to drag them, get them up, remind them, like do all these things to where like I'm babysitting them, right? So like for the person that wants to join, they have to be motivated themselves, right? I'm not like,
you're not babysitting, you're 10xing this.
I have a formula that could get you from 0 to hero, but you gotta perform. I'm not gonna be holding your hand. I'm not gonna be motivating you every day. I'm not gonna be texting you up yet. Did you go drive by that property? You gotta know what you want, right? And so when I do add people onto the team, like you're motivated, you have the funds, you know what you want. And all I have to do is plug and play. All I have to do is plug in the address of somebody that needs help, plug them with somebody that wants to buy, mesh them together, and now we have a win-win and a win situation, right? So all these win situations, right? And so, like I always say, like use me as a resource, right? Because I'm a resource and I have enough experience to get you from A to Z. But in order to be a part of the team, I normally charge a fee of like $25,000 to do any type of deal, right? And it's because I only want the elite. I want the ones that are motivated, the ones that are high, and the ones that like know what they want. So like if you say, hey, look, Vin, I want to buy 4 properties this year in Katy or in Sugarland, I'm going to give you first dibs at it because you're on the team.
Right.
And that's what I specifically do for a lot of people that like understand the value of me, understand the value of how to make money in real estate.
Right, and understanding the value is one of the most important things. And I do have a superstar question for you. I'm sure you get this often, perhaps not. How would you recommend someone that is first starting out in the investment world how to go about with a loan? Hard money, to utilize cash, or to go conventional FHA? What would you recommend on that instance? I know everyone's DTI and credit situation is always a little bit different, but would you recommend cash or hard money?
So it depends on how old you are first, right? So if you're 18 to 21, then that may be a little bit different, right? But if you're like graduating like college ready into work, that's a little bit different. But if you're actually successful and you have the capital, it's different, right? Because like everybody has a different formula based on where they're at, right?
Right.
So specifically where you're asking me, it is a broad question. I can answer a broad question, but if you want to narrow it down, I can give you the specifics of that. Or
well, let's have the specifics. Or you can just, you know what, let's give it as a general. Let's throw it out there because let's hear it like that.
Yeah. So like if I was teaching my nephew that turns 19 on how to buy his first property, right? I'd be like, look, is your credit score above 660 or is it below?
Right.
That's the first thing, right? Because if it's above it, I'm gonna want you to get an FHA loan, which is 3.5% down. And with the 3.5% down, I'll get the seller to pay for all of his closing costs. And I'll try to get the builder or the homeowner to pay to take off some of the sales price, right? So then you're buying a deal with no money down with using your credit, right? But what if I was 25 and I was a broke college student that is barely suffering or barely paying bills and I have no income, right? So then I'll be like, hey, look, if you have credit cards that were at $10, $20, $30,000, we could do a balance transfer at a 0% or 3% or 5%, take some of that money, balance transfer to your checking account and use that as a down payment to buy a house.
Smart. Right?
So like, it depends on where you're at, but like on that same scenario, most of these reinstatement deals, these pre-foreclosure deals are about $25,000, right? And we're in one of the hottest markets right now. At least I think
we are. The market is booming. It's back to booming right now.
Yeah, so like at $25,000 from me, you can still find a deal to buy, right? So like if you have two credit cards at $12,500 each, we could take that out. Even if you didn't have a 0%, even if you took it out at a 20%, it doesn't matter. Your return on investment, buying that subject to, taking over that loan is even higher return than the 20% cash advance, right? So we would take that money out and then give that money to the seller. They would deed you over the property, and then you become the owner, and then you put it in the market, and then you sell it, right? Without repairs, right? And then all these days now, you could even use your credit card for repairs. You don't even have to use cash or Zelle, or you could use a credit card.
I've heard people go and get a loan, Home Depot card, etc., and just kind of play with it like that. And everyone's circumstance is obviously different. But one more question for you, Vin. If someone came to you and said, I have $20,000 to get into real estate, what would you tell them?
So most likely they're going to want to buy some real estate, right? I mean, that's the thing, right? And so for $20,000, it's not much, but it's still possible, right? And for $20,000, either they have to go scrape the list themselves, right? Meaning like there's softwares like Batch Leads and PropStream and HAR, so they will have to go scrape the data themselves. And then once they scrape the data of what they want to buy, they have to send like postcards, mailers, cold calling, texting,
would be huge.
Driving, right? So there's all of these things that they could do, right? And then after they make thousands of calls, because a lot of people are like, oh, you're only making 100 calls. No, you need to make like thousands of calls to get to 100 people to pick up the phone, and for 10 people to say maybe, and then one person to buy. So like this huge funnel goes into like this one deal, right? And let's pretend that one deal leads into a deal that you could buy for $20,000, right? Which is possible. It's definitely, anything is possible, right? And so you get into that one deal and you fund it for that one deal. The seller, and this is gonna have to be a subject to just because.
Wait, let's
easier.
tell them what sub 2 is.
Oh, really?
Fast.
Okay.
Sub 2.
All right, so there we go. So in the last
Subject 2 or sub 2 is what it is known as, by the way.
Yes,
So.
that's correct. That's correct. So in the last 20 years, I started with subject 2s.
Did you?
Which is taking over the loan. Yeah, which is taking the loan. I was 24 when I started. I bought my first house when I was 24.
Wow.
A month after I got out of that academy, that real estate academy, right? And so subject 2 is where there is an existing loan in place.
Yep.
And there is a current interest rate on it. There's a current monthly payment on it. There's a current term on it. And all you're doing is taking over the loan temporarily, taking title to the property, and then selling it, right? And so the subject 2 works from ages 18 to 88 because you don't have to qualify for it.
Right.
You're just taking over the loan temporarily,
And
right?
it's so genius.
Yeah,
Like,
and it's
so genius.
And I always say like for instance, like if you were driving like a Mercedes, right, and you signed up with Mercedes Financial and you owe $60,000 on the Mercedes, right, and you want to sell it, but that person that wants to buy it doesn't have any credit, so all they're doing is taking over your existing car payment until they're able to fix up their credit to refinance your car. And that's just the subject 2. Simple like that. That's it. All I'm doing is just taking over your loan, driving the car, putting insurance on it, and then when I could qualify for a house or a loan, I could just pay it off.
I just think that's so incredible, especially if you started that at least 20 years ago when interest rates were maybe a completely different ballgame. So I can only imagine what you were starting at. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Have you held on to any properties from 20 years?
You know, I calculated all my properties. I'm like at 1,900 properties. That's a lot of properties.
How does it feel?
You know, I mean, it's a legacy that I'm building. You know, and I'm helping I'm helping other people become financially free. I mean, it feels good. It feels good because like this works, and you just have to know what to do for it to work for you, right? And a lot of people have things against subject 2s and against taking over loans and doing all this stuff. And, you know, we'll talk about hard money, and I love hard money too. It's just depending on the situation. It's like, for me, it's like you have to have more tools in your tool belt, right? So if you have a Swiss Army blade, so you could use it left to right, you could use it to ply, you could use it to open, but if you just have like a hammer, all you can do is just hammer. Right? And if you have a flathead, all you can do is like, you can't do anything, right? So like the more tools you have in your tool belt, the easier it is for you to find deals, to locate deals, and then to fund deals, right? So like you mentioned, you know, hard money, and then you mentioned like FHA, VA, and all that stuff. Like it depends on the deal, right? It depends on if the seller, if it's an estate property and the bankruptcy or estate trustee needs the funds within 14 days, you gotta have to use hard money.
Right.
But if you're getting it 50% off, use hard money. It's faster, it's easier. They're not gonna let you take over the loan subject 2. It doesn't make sense, right?
Right.
There's like all these people in the state, they want their money, so you have to use a hard money lender, pay them 3 points, pay them the 12%, get a title policy, fund the whole thing, and then use the lender's money to fix it, right? So like it's just
there's so many different ways to go about it, and I think that's the most important thing that you and I both understand, and that's something I always ask people when they're like, oh, I want to buy, I want to do this, or I want to do that. What does your current financial situation look like for you? Because just because somebody else's financial situation look like that, you might be in a better opportunity to pursue something even better for yourself. So it's just really ultimately up to everyone's financial situation at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
what else? Anything else?
I
haven't even warmed up yet. I'm still like here.
You know what?
Anything else about the auction that we missed? Anything about the bidding part? Well, so like, you know, like bidding on properties, it requires a different set of skills.
Okay.
Because like, even though it may sound easy, just raising your hand and bidding, right? But a lot of people get nervous, right? And what do they say? Like, a lot of people would rather die than get in front of a stage and speak to somebody, right? And bidding's kind of the same thing, right?
I've never heard that one before.
Well, you never heard of that before? Really? Yeah, like it's called stage fright. It's called like
stage fright for sure. I just didn't know someone rather.
Yeah, people are like, man, I'd rather I'm not talking in front of 100,000 people, whatever it is. And so like,
I can see that being a thing.
Yeah,
just kind of putting yourself out there in a vulnerable kind of situation.
100%.
But being vulnerable is a good thing sometimes.
Yeah,
you can't.
Just gotta get out of this show.
Yeah.
And so like this last time, maybe 2 months ago, I told one of my investors, hey, stand over there and bid on this one, right? And so he's like, man, I think I got it. I've seen you do it 4 times already. I think I got it, right? And so I go bid on another property, and I come back, and I was like, hey, did you win? He's like, I didn't hear it go up. And I'm like, what do you mean didn't hear it go up? And then the other guy's like, yeah, he heard it go up, but he started shaking his hand like this.
Oh, no.
And I was like, did you get nervous? He's like, yeah, I kind of got nervous, and I didn't know what to do because I couldn't hear her, and then I didn't want to bid on the wrong property. And I was like,
oh, poor
so
thing.
yeah, we lost that property.
That's okay. It's okay. It was a learning experience for everyone.
It's definitely different. Yeah, you just, and it's not even a skill you can see on YouTube or any social media channels. Like nobody teaches about. So that's another thing, right? So nobody talks about the auction. Nobody talks about the bidding.
No,
nobody talks about how
don't.
much cashier's check, excess proceeds. Talks about, like, at the auction there's tax sales, right? We didn't talk about that.
Well, let's add on top of that, because one thing I feel like that can be a common also misconception is when you're looking at these files, whether it's online or you're seeing it in person, or you come to these charts and some of them say cancel it after a while and you're like, why did that happen? Well, we already know that that's because somebody went in before the auction actually came and they were able to secure the property on their end. Now, it will say like a case study or a number on there, and it'll say, ABC versus 1, 2, 3.
That's
and
right.
It could be towards HOA liens, it can be towards, just whatever the situation was. Now, how do you find that out furthermore if you wanted to dive into that?
So, in any suit in the county, there's a cause number, right? So it's a 2 parties suing each other, right? And so based on the original petition, it tells you what they're suing for. So if they're suing for materials, then they're going to be suing each other for like a judgment against the other party, right? And so like on the newspaper, on the digital form itself, it'll tell you it's a judgment against party A versus party B. The cool thing about a judgment is that there's no redemption in a judgment. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
So what that means is that, like, if you hire a plumber to come to your house and you don't pay him, he'll put a mechanics lien on your house.
Gotcha.
And then he has to abstract that mechanics lien into a judgment, which he has to sue you. And then once the judge says yes, he is obligated to get his materials, then he can abstract that judgment from this house into the foreclosure.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
so am I wrong if you see that the starting bid might be at like $2,000? Is that $2,000 a part of what the judgment was?
That's it. So like imagine if you had to get a water heater done and you had to change out a faucet, right? And that total bill was $2,000.
Right.
But you're like, man, I don't like the guy, man. He put a cheap faucet in.
He's gonna put that lien on your
and
property.
he promised me that it was gonna be a Ream water heater when he gave me an invitation one, right? You're like, man, I'm gonna dispute this. I'm not gonna pay for it. And so the guy puts a mechanics lien on the property, and he gives you 30-day notice, which is what is required here. And so then he sends you a lawsuit, and you don't show up, so he gets a default judgment against the house. Default judgment. Like, he didn't show up. And then in 30 days, he calls the constable and says, hey, I got a default judgment. The judge signed off on it. And so now we're going to abstract it and take it into foreclosure. And if my investor comes here and says, hey, man, you know what? So Shelby's investment property has a starting bid at $2,000, and she only owes $100,000, but the property's worth $200,000.
Right.
So then now, if I buy that judgment for $2,000, I get to reap $98,000 in equity. And the cool thing about it, and like I said, there's no redemption. So if she doesn't pay for that judgment, she's going to lose her investment and the equity in the property. That sucks, man. You know what I'm saying? So yes, to answer your question, you can buy these judgments for $2,000 or $10,000 or $20,000 or whatever the amount is. And the cool thing about it is that there's no redemption. So you don't have to wait 6 months for somebody to come back and reclaim it.
Right. And just to add one more spin off on there, because I just want to have this as like a disclosure, I do think that this is right, or if I'm wrong, correct me, of course. But if you even bought the property at $2,000 and that constable or that attorney or that trustee is like, well, here are also my legal fees. I want you to pay an extra $500 or $600 right there. you're obligated to pay that, or can you negotiate that as well?
So normally on the judgment itself, it'll have the breakdown.
Okay, so it's already included in the judgment. Okay, so they can't come back to you afterwards and be like, oh, well, you know, since I put this together for you, you're obligated to pay this. The judgment is already including fees, or maybe not fees, or whatever.
Yeah. So normally the judgment from the constable's office has all of the legal fees, all of the materials, and everything already on it. So what else does happen, and we're talking about a small amount, right? But let's pretend we're talking about a big commercial deal, right? So like one of my assistant just called me earlier, and she said there's a strip center, massive. It's 4 acres one, and then 2 acres another in Sugarland.
Wow. Right?
You know where City Hall is at in Sugarland?
Yes.
The strip center right behind it.
Oh, nice.
So that one, right? And don't get the address, because don't tell anybody. Hopefully this doesn't air before the auction next week. So the judgment is for $20,000 on plumbing issues.
Sheesh.
I know, it's like crazy,
right?
It's like
nothing though, which is like, crazy. It's a lot to some people, but like.
What do you think it's worth? That whole strip center?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. I'd have to look at it.
Okay. Well, I'll just give you a secret. It's $8 million.
I was gonna say over $1 million for
Dude,
sure.
It's $8 million, right?
Jeez.
And the loan on it is like 4.4. And this judgment is for like $20,000, right?
Oh, that hurts.
Yeah.
That has to hurt them to know.
I don't think it's gonna go to sale. And then you mentioned earlier, when you see it says canceled, that's what it means, right? So like
someone came in,
did
XYZ.
They had a judgment and they have a sale date.
Out for you.
And then you know the bid, but then it says cancel. So maybe somebody came into an agreement somehow. But yeah, that happens all the time.
Cool.
Yeah.